Yo, and welcome back to my channel. If you are wondering why I'm wearing makeup on my face, it's because A, it makes me look fabulous, and B, as kind of some solidarity towards the fake reader girls thing that kind of blew up on social media this week. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, basically this old white dude YouTuber, or old dude tuber, white dude tuber, had a little bit of a go this week about these young booktubers out there with their fancy cameras and their blush, and who probably aren't proper readers. And it blew up in his face, which is rightfully so, because dude is salty because no one's watching his videos, I guess. No one watches my videos, but I'm not salty about it. I might be salty, don't lick me and find out. That would be really weird. Don't do that. But basically the community kicked off, and rightly so, in this idea that wearing makeup somehow makes you incapable of liking books. It was super patronising. It was just all around a bit of a douche move, and also, you know, I look fabulous, so why wouldn't I? And as for my makeup skills, I'd like to tell you that I have a professional makeup artist to do this for me, but I don't. It's just that 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance came out in 2004 when I was 16, and this was just what you did. And the other reason that I wanted to wear eyeliner is because I have no time for any gender norms. I have time for it. Anyone can wear makeup, and if it makes you feel good, you should wear it. And as I said earlier, it makes me look fabulous, so I'm going to continue. So, deal with it. Deal with it! Anyway, enough of me being a dork, and on to more of me being a dork, but with books in my hands. So I'm going to do a monthly wrap-up of the month that we are currently in, which I believe is the month of May, although they all kind of blur into one in my head. I hadn't intended to do wrap-ups or book hauls and things like that, just because I don't actually read very quickly, and I was a little bit embarrassed to kind of be like, hey, here's the 3 books I've read this month. Yeah. And also, I didn't think that I bought that many books a month, and so I thought my haul videos would be super small, and then people stared at me disbelievingly, and I went, oh yeah, actually no, I do get a lot of books every month. So I thought I'd give it a go, and talk about books that I have read so far this month. Yeah, there's only a couple of days left, and the book I've just started is like 500 pages long, so I'm probably not going to finish that in the next couple of days, because, as I said, I am quite a slow reader, and I am not ashamed, except I'm a little ashamed, but still, shut up, don't judge me. So, the first book that I read in the month of May, which I actually started in April and finished in May, I believe, is The Girl of Ink and Stars by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, which is a middle grade fantasy adventure novel, one of the prettiest books that I have ever seen. It's published by Chicken House. They've really put a lot of work into this book. Open it up, it's got a goddamn map in the front. Gotta love a map. Oh, I love any book that comes with a map. It's got these really cool kind of page illustrations as well, kind of shiny lines and things like that. And it is about a girl called Isabella, who has lived in a village her entire life on an island called the Island of Joya. And she is not allowed to leave the island. There is a governor. No, she's not allowed to leave the village, even, because the governor refuses to allow anyone to leave the village. But through her father's maps, she studies the world. She's fascinated by the world outside, the things that she can't see, because her father used to be a cartographer. He used to map the world. And so when her best friend, who is the governor's daughter, goes missing, she gathers up her maps and she heads out onto the island to try and find her best friend. And that's when she discovers that the world outside is not safe. There are myths that are not myths. There are legends that are far more real than legends out on the island, and it kind of descends into this almost Hobbit-like journey of kind of discovery, of realization, as the kind of world that she thinks that she knows completely drops away and becomes something much bigger, much more beautiful, and much more dangerous and terrifying. It's the perfect kind of almost coming of age, not quite, but a little under coming of age, that kind of higher end of the 9 to 12 or lower end of the teen spectrum, because it's about friendship, it's about endurance, it's about finding out who you are and about becoming comfortable with who you are. It's a beautiful book. Kieran is an award-winning poet, I believe, and her use of language is really lyrical, flows really well. The book itself is beautiful. Even if you didn't think that the story sounds great, it still looks gorgeous, and the story is great. So if you don't believe me, then shut up. The next book that I read in May was actually an adult novel, not an adult novel. Note the stress on the D in the word adult. Adult is aimed at grown-ups. Adult is rude. Anyway, it was The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I think I'm pronouncing right, but I might not be, which is apparently quite unusual for his novels, although I have only ever read Never Let Me Go, so I can't really comment on how different it is from his usual style. But I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. It tells the story of two elderly Britons called Axel and Beatrice, and it is set in sub-Roman Britain, which is the time after the Romans had pulled out of England and Anglo-Saxons and Britons kind of were left in these nomadic tribes. It's a brilliant book because it's set in this historical era, but it's also fantasy, and it kind of pulls on ideas of dragons and giants and ogres, and this idea that what we have in our myths and legends and folklore were actually real and have since died out in our present day, but for Axel and Beatrice and the other characters in The Buried Giant are very much an accepted part of reality, something that they know of and try to avoid because, dragons. Why wouldn't you avoid that? It sounds pretty dangerous. One of the things that I really like about The Buried Giant is the mist. So the mist is something that pervades the entire story, and it is a sickness that has fallen across the land that The Buried Giant is set in, and it's sapped away the memories of the people who are there, so everyone kind of lives day to day with a vague understanding of kind of the histories and things like that, but not a lot of understanding of their own personal histories, which just means that the book feels very sad, it feels very melancholy. Axel has a lot of memories of regret and of things that he has done that he has a lot of negative emotion attached towards, but he can't remember what they are, and that's really heartbreaking. Just the way that it is told, the whole book is filled with kind of a sense of melancholy, a sense of guilt, but placeless guilt, which is really clever. I thought it was beautifully written. It is a slow start. It is. The first couple of chapters, which are just Axel and Beatrice in their village, don't really do much, but they set out on a journey to find their son who left when he was a young man, to a village that they believe is very nearby, although their memories of him are of course obscured by the fog, and it's about how their lives kind of unravel, their memories come back to them in kind of ups and downs, through this sea of forgetfulness that covers the world. It's really well done. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very sad novel, and it made a big difference from the standard fantasy of barbarians and wizards and dragons and all that stuff. I don't know what I mean. Shut up. Right, the next book that I read in May, which could well be cheating, I don't know, it was a reread and it is a poetry collection, not a novel, but was Ariel by Sylvia Plath. It's my favourite collection of poetry, and because I can be quite melodramatic, I quite like it. When I'm feeling a bit sad, I sometimes give it a flick through. It's a beautiful collection. I'm not really going to say very much else on the matter other than if you quite like poetry, I would give it a go. It's worth a read. Also, Mate, look at this Faber and Faber edition of it. Isn't it absolutely gorgeous? Faber and Faber do some amazingly pretty poetry collections. I love them. I love it. It's very nice. Okay, fourth book that I read in May. I need to stop saying that, you know what I'm talking about at this point. This is a proof copy. Book's not out until July, I believe, but this is Eden Summer by Liz Flanagan, which is a YA novel published by David Fickling Books, who are the publishers responsible for The Joys of Unbecoming by Jenny Downham and The Art of Being Normal by Lisa Williamson, so you know that they do good YA, very high concept, kind of very intelligent and emotional. So Eden Summer is the story of a girl called Jess and her best friend Eden, who has gone missing. It's set in the northwest, so in Yorkshire, which is a beautiful part of the country, quite bleak, and Liz captures this really well, which I said in my review on my blog. It feels like the setting is its own character in the book, this kind of very hilly, very bleak, very harsh but very beautiful landscape that kind of works its way into literally everything in the story. It's full of guilt and it's kind of full of regret and secret. It reminded me a lot of Tanya Burns' Follow Me Down, which is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. She has a very good way with metaphor. She has a lot of layers to her characters. It's a fairly short novel, but it has a lot of emotion wrapped up in what it does do, and it uses flashbacks very cleverly to kind of create two almost parallel timelines, one where everything was okay in these characters' lives and everything feels like summer, and then one where everything is starting to unravel, and the chaos that comes along with that, especially in Eden's character, is really quite driving for the plot. It's really fun to read, as well as this character kind of falls apart, but not in a depressive way, in a very manic sort of way. It's quite scary, but very well done. It's a brilliant book. It's got a great kind of plot arc to it as well, so I really enjoyed it. And finally, and then I'll shut up, the last book, which I actually finished this morning, which is The Ghosts of Heaven by Marcus Sedgwick, which I have had on my shelf for quite some time now because, shiny, which I think is pretty much the reason I bought it. I bought it with no other knowledge other than the fact that I have read a few Marcus Sedgwick books before. Revolver was brilliant, so I was kind of interested in this one. It's subsequently been shortlisted for the Carnegie this year, I believe, and oh my god, it's so good. So good. I kind of don't know where to start. The idea behind the book is that it is 4 separate stories, all linked by a theme of spirals, which sounds really weird, and it is really weird. It's also really good. So the first story is set in kind of proto-language human civilization. It's about a hunt going on, kind of Neanderthalic, whatever pre-human civilization was called, I forget. And it's about a girl who is obsessed with spirals. She believes that the spirals she can see around her in nature have some kind of significance and can influence the hunt of the others in her tribe as they go out to hunt. It kind of taps into this idea of primal magic and how symbols have meaning, and how that that kind of intrinsic belief that symbols have meaning led to humans inventing language. It's very, very clever. It's all written without any dialogue. It's very good. The second story is set in England, I believe, and touches on ideas of how spirals and symbols affected the belief of witches in kind of the 1600s. And it's about a girl who is the daughter of a wise woman and how she uses symbols and nature and things around her to try and help people and try and make her way through the world. And yeah, it has more stuff to it than that, but I can't really go into it. And then the third story, which I adored, I thought was my favourite story in the collection, is about a doctor who works in an insane asylum. It's very H.P. Lovecraft, and it's about one of his patients who is terrified of spirals. He finds them just mind-numbingly, blindingly terrifying. Other than that, he is a very articulate, intelligent writer and poet, and it's this one thing that has landed him in this mental institution. That one is probably set, I think, early 1900s. It kind of makes some references to Victorian asylums being outdated, but hasn't still quite come across modern psychotherapy. So I think that's kind of where it sits, and basically the asylum is dominated by this massive spiral staircase, and the doctor believes that if he can get this patient to walk up the spiral staircase, he will be able to cure him. And it's very good, and it is dripping with atmosphere. And the patient's name is Charles Dexter, which, if you're a Lovecraft fan, is a big nod to the Curious Case of Charles Dexter Ward. I absolutely adored that. And then the last story is really good. It's a science fiction kind of part set in the distant future on a sleeper ship that is transporting 500 people to a new planet, to seed a new planet with life and to set up a new human colony. And this ship is travelling through space, and it is about a sentinel on this ship who wakes up for 12 hours every 10 years to just perform routine maintenance. That was hard for me to say. And when he wakes up, he spends 12 hours making sure the ship is fine, making sure everything's okay, then going back into stasis for another 10 years. So basically he dreams for 10 years, wakes up for 12 hours, goes back to sleep, and it's about him discovering that something has gone wrong. Sorry about that, my memory card got full and this camera didn't tell me. Yes, so something has gone wrong, and people in the pods on the ship have died in the time that he has been asleep, and he can't see a reason why. And this one touches on themes of spirals, kind of looking at how the ship is moving through space in a spiral formation, and how the galaxy itself is a spiral-shaped galaxy which rotates in a spiral form, and how spirals are kind of innate in nature and in space. And it very cleverly uses time and space. The ship itself is travelling at near light speeds, so cause and effect are very odd and very unusual in the story, and that lets it be really weird and really intelligent and a bit mind-blowing in places. I thought it was a brilliant book. It might well be one of the best books I've ever read. Not this year, just ever. It is so intelligently done, so well linked. The themes and kind of the nods and things like that are really, really well done. I've heard a few people say that it works really well if you read the stories back to front as well, so I might have to give that a go at some point and try to kind of get something a bit different and a bit new out of it, which is always nice. And that is it. That is all the books what I have read in the month of May. Doesn't seem like that many to me, especially compared to some of the other wrap-ups that I watch, but hey, I would rather read 5 really good books that I really enjoyed than 12 books that I kind of thought were okay. So, I don't know. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, you can give it a like, that would be super cool. You can comment underneath if you have read any of the other books, any of the books on my list, and you can subscribe. Subscribing would be super cool because I quite like the numbers that come up. They make me feel loved. You can find me on Twitter if you want to hear more of the nonsense that I spout from my face but via my fingers, normally about books. And you can also find me on a few other social media kind of channels as well, which I will mention down in the description down there. Thank you very much for watching.